Joining me now is John Laghezza of The Athletic. John, how you doing, my friend?
All right, what's up? It is drafting season. I'm so excited. Thanks for having me on. TGFBI is in full swing. My draft room has been a lot of fun. I believe you know one of the people in my draft room. Her name
Oh,
is
that's
Her name is Danielle. You may have met her before. I'm not sure, but no. Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations to you again on putting on this event. Between this and Potapalooza, I don't know how you do it. I've joked with you in the past. Each year I've kind of platformed some people for my league and had them on a pod. And just organizing 4 or 5 people is very difficult. So really hat tip to you, and you're doing great work, man.
I appreciate that. I actually completely forgot that this is the league with my wife in it, so I'm gonna have some bones to pick with you as we talk
She's
about
doing very well. She's doing very
exactly, which
well.
is the problem. You guys are
Yeah, she's doing
supposed to be
very well.
making this very, very difficult on her, but I really like her team. But let's talk about your team first.
Okay.
We'll get to all the stuff you're doing in the industry here in a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
But you started pick 2. I love your start. You start Julio Rodriguez, Brandon Woodruff, Edwin Diaz. Was that the plan coming in?
Well, I'm usually at the back end, so I'm never quite sure what's going to fall to that second round pick, which is part of why I really like that spot so much.
Mm-hmm.
The middle has kind of gotten away from me, Justin. I found in the dead middle of a 15-team league, I'm not crazy about pick number 1, and I'm not crazy about pick number 2 either.
Yeah.
So getting a guy like Julio, or if you get Acuna or even Judge, and all those guys they're all fantastic. And then on the way back, the plan was I want to go for the overall. So and I don't mean this in so I'm going wild. It means I want to make sure that I have all of the major bases covered. Meaning, if you're going to win a very competitive overall, I really think you need a pitcher that's going to go 200 innings, and then at least have another one that has a spec for 180 or 190 innings, right? I think it's really important.
Yeah.
Also, the same to be said for saves, where generally in a fab league, I might not go for Diaz in the third there and try and make sure I got someone in that next level where I'm still getting one. He's a pop of 40 saves with all of the ratios you could ask for, 70 innings and maybe 100 strikeouts, So, like I said, I'm not saying I'm shooting for the stars because I want to be responsible in my winning. Because something I think we've learned in this past week is how boring overall winners can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say this all the time. People, because you and I talked about it a little bit off air prior to recording. Like my 2019 was like main event was a main event in which I lit $1,700 on fire chasing upside. But if you actually go, and the beautiful thing about like NFBC is you can go and look at the history of these teams, right? You can see how these teams were put together, how they're constructed. And if you go look at overall winners in TGFBI, in main events, things like that, they're remarkably boring. They are not something you would go like, oh, they shot for a bunch of upside and hit, everything just came together. No, these were teams that were built with really, really steady, boring foundation pieces, and they just out-earned everybody.
Yeah, you keep learning these lessons as I speak for myself as I make my way into this high stakes soiree, right? In NFBC, and that is definitely the truth. It's almost like it's not one reaching for those players. I should say in the first 5 or 6 rounds. I think that's probably what I mean more than anything. It's not to say those people that won, bypassed quality upside for boring stuff later on. But I think in the beginning, they did kind of what I was alluding to just now, trying to cover all the major bases in a real, legitimate way, right? So if you have a guy like Acuna or Julio, you could be talking 30-30. Hard to beat that with a good average. And again, something I've had to learn from you, because I know what you would talk about in standalone leagues. You'd be okay punting batting average.
Absolutely.
Something I would also, very hard to do in these leagues. Not only that, I would say I had to learn the hard way the importance of the impact of that batting average across a maximum amount of plate appearances. It's very hard to understate. Jose Abreu was a great example of that. He didn't really pop off the page, the stats from last year, but his return was phenomenal because it was 690 plate appearances or whatever, and he hit 300. Those are carrying tools in fantasy. So make sure you're getting plus average with all the bases. You're getting lots of saves, big innings with strikeouts, a pathway to wins. We know wins are wonky, Justin. I'm not going to pretend to know that. But what's the best way to get close? Are guys that pitch for distance, that on a decent team and have a good bullpen. So if you have a starter, your ace, let's say, that has a closer attached to them, correlated, let's say, that's one of the top 10, that's a good spot to be in. So if you could get Woodruff, like I have, going every 5 days, hopefully he's giving the ball right to Devin Williams to slam the door, and you're getting your love that way. But trying to be really good with this. Now, I don't know, people kind of look at my draft board. I want to impress, right? I've never actually had these drafts where people cared who I picked.
Well, let's talk about your next 2 picks, because this is where I started having some questions. You're going to have to sell me on your 4 or 5 turn. Dylan Cease and Adolis Garcia, both of which I have lower than ADP in my projections. I see the risk associated with them. What makes you okay with taking them where you got them?
Okay, that has to be close to the max for Cease, because he just kept falling and falling. I don't know what we really want. I don't know what we really want for these guys. I didn't realize that if you go 200 innings and strike out 230 batters, but you have a 10% walk rate, we're not interested. I didn't realize that was like this non-starter. You and I, all kidding aside, you and I were talking about this off air. I know people are concerned about the walk rate. They're also regressing the fly balls. That regression has not worked yet, but I believe it's for a reason. The quality of his fastball and the way he works up in the zone opens the pathway to lots of infield flies, which are basketed in the fly ball bin. So if you're just regressing the FB bin, you're erroneously doing that, I think, because there are infield flies that are sticky, that are never going out, right? Those are 0.000 XBAs. He's also featuring the slider now, which is just, it's like ridiculous. I don't know why people do not like Dylan Cease. So again, we mentioned this on Sleeper and a Bust. I use a triple slash, so it's usage, X slug whiff, pretty self-explanatory. The slider, 43 use, 223 X slug, 43% whiff rate. One of the best pitches in the game from a guy who has shown us max innings on a team that, I don't know, they're average, better than average, I guess, at a discount. I don't know. I think the I don't want to say hatred for Cease, not hatred, but I think like the disdain for Cease, he actually checks a box for something we were talking about earlier, right? Guys that maybe are just getting a little bit too much stain on them. And I think he's a little bit better than that. And then for Garcia, briefly, again, it's an overall play that I think he's like I've been calling it roto juice, home run plus steals. He's all of that. I also think there's a bit of a pathway for a neutral batting average. Again, he's never going to hit 280, but I think we're going to get 245 to 255, in which case the big argument against him, batting average, I don't know if it's valid. So we're kind of getting, it's Javi Baez, right? Javi Baez-esque. I actually think it's a little bit better. I think the power tool is better than Javi Baez. Although, again, I'm not trying to make up for the plate approach. It's not.
Yeah.
Very good. It's not very good.
That's the plate approach for me is the part that scared you. Last year, and you and I talked about this on the Sleeper and the Buzz. Like last year, the hate got so bad that he became a huge bargain at the draft table. This year, I feel like he's fairly ranked. He's probably not going to end up on a lot of my teams just because I don't trust that plate approach. Cease, I think he is going to start. I mentioned this on the Sleep on the Bus too. Is I'm going to write an article called "This Year's Adolis Garcia." It's going to be a list of guys who the hate is going so far on that they're going to become draft bargains in the way that Adolis Garcia did last year. Cease could end up qualifying for those. So you got him at pick 59, which is definitely lower than ADP. ADP is right around, I believe, 50 or so. He went 67th in my league, which was the mock or the max. I had picked 68, and I don't like Dylan Cease. I have not drafted or come close to drafting him this year. If he had made it to me at 68, I would have had to take him. Like I mean, like, even though I don't like him, like it would have been too good of a value to pass up. So I think this is like a really good example of everybody should have a price, right? Like there are certain guys you'll take off the board completely just because of probably injuries or things like that. But if there's no injury concern, like everybody should have a price. And I almost got Dylan Cease at what is mine. It was extremely low.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of, I'm not, like I said, I just don't get it. It's solely like this walk rate. People are just solely focused on this walk rate.
Yeah.
when I don't know, I think he's got the skill set that lends itself to just no one is calling for like a 2 ERA. Like no one's doing that. But I just don't think he's getting the proper love because the innings pitched and the strikeouts are so clutch here. And he's a set it and forget it guy. You could throw him against absolutely anybody. Plus, they've shown improvement. Maybe I have a soft spot for Ethan Katz because I interviewed him, but they're really cerebral over there. They're very analytical, and they're very much into progression, which is also always the stuff you're looking for. So when I have like the youth and the track record, plus I shouldn't be jinxing this, he's been healthy, right? His health record so far is good. So that's as good as we got. Don't tell that to Gavin Lux, but
I mean, you can pretty much pencil in 220 strikeouts. Like he's had.
That's what I got, man.
Yeah,
I wasn't targeting him, to be honest, but it's there. He's not coming back, and for me, he's up there with the best pitchers in the game. Like I just think we're so.
Well, and the beauty of it is he's not your number one. So you've got the stabilization in the ratios. You've got even more strikeouts drafting a guy like Edwin Diaz, and then you add on Dylan Cease, and that's a pretty damn good start to a rotation. Your next 5 picks, I love. I absolutely love.
Yeah, I think that went well.
Yeah, MJ Melendez, Willy Adames, Luis Severino, Rhys Hoskins, Alexis Diaz, which gives you the ability to name your team something Diaz-esque because you've got both Diaz's, Diaz-I don't know. But talk to me about those 5 picks because, I mean, I love the way you built that.
Yeah, I think a lot of this it's not say repetitive, but it's in the same theme, right? I had a overall in mind. So one of those things that I've struggled with historically, being a bit newer to NFBC, is I believe if you want to win the overall, you've got to have at least one catcher that's going to get 550 plate appearances. Mm-hmm. And punting is cute, and finding the second guy at the very end is fun. Last year I was all over Cal Raleigh, so like good for me. But if you paired him with another bad catcher, it didn't matter. You're still getting outpaced by better players, all right, maybe they're not getting 600 and 600, but even let's say your opponent has 1,125, 1,025 quality plate appearances, right? Because they're getting JT Realmuto, guys like Will Smith. These are legitimate hitters. These guys would be hitters if they were DHs. They'd be legit. So I wanted to make sure that I got a piece of that catching pie because there aren't that many guys. Melendez also in the outfield. He could DH, leading off, so it's like max PA. So give me that. Willy Adames, I think you got to get one of the shortstops. Also, he's always kind of been my guy. I've been a really big fade on Bogarts. I really like Wander Franco, but I guess I like everyone else. I want to see the roto juice first. We haven't seen the homers and the steals. Like, we know they're in there somewhere, but Adames feels like a 30 home run guy because we already got it. Severino, for me, as I've done in my rankings, kind of doing all this granular work, doing a lot of the diagnostic work that I talk about, Severino started passing all these like scrutiny tests with like flying colors. And sometimes that's what the spreadsheet's really good for. You format the spreadsheet, you can kind of clip off the name and take a look. And there's a lot of great stuff. He was phenomenal last year. I mean, 3.18 ERA, but a 1 flat whip, 6.16 OPS, 261 expected WOBA, 294 expected ERA. So peripherals are strong. 20% came on his walk, which has always been a benchmark for excellence. 83% in zone contact rate. So, right, he could beat you in the zone, something that I know you're always talking about because it matters, right? That stuff matters. Suppressing hard, it's just really good. The barrel rate is 7. The home run rate at 1.2. It seems a little bit higher than what I think we might get from like the fly ball rate. But remember, I was talking about those infield flies. He doesn't work high enough, and that's why the infield fly ball is there. But again, even if you get a repeat for Severino, he feels like a real steal. I think because of his past, he's getting a bit dinged, which I get. But when he's on the mound, then the context is fantastic. If you're going to get wins, Severino is a pop to win 15 games getting off the bus in spring training. That's just kind of what it is. So, it was pretty much, it felt like intuitive. It just almost felt boring to me taking the catcher I wanted. I got the shortstop before the year ended. I got the best starting pitcher. Then Rhys Hoskins, I hope I didn't make a mistake here because they were saying he's going to play, and I don't think he has yet.
I think he has.
He's coming off the procedure. They were saying they were expecting him fully healthy. And something, again, you and I spoke about are these overreaction to what you so aptly named the sensory deprivation that happens in the offseason, right? We're in the dark, hanging out with Aaron Rodgers. We're not allowed to talk. And boom, one piece of news sounds like the biggest thing ever, right? So that's how I felt about Hoskins. Excuse me.
Yeah, and Hoskins is in the lineup today. So he's batting third, playing first base. So like
and the field. That's very important. You mentioned that earlier. Yeah. The field very important.
So he's like I know a lot of people really scared about him when the news of his offseason surgery came out, but he's playing. Like I don't think we should be afraid of Rhys Hoskins at this point.
Oh, then hold on. This will be good because I want to segue this into your opinion because I'd love to know what you think. Is the Diaz play, right? So I'm not really trying to get pegged as this big Diaz guy because for me it's really draft and hold season, and I kind of worry about getting attached to the Reds pitchers. But going into Fab season, I feel like this guy is going way too late. Yeah, I know, and I get it. Listen, I'm not trying to say I know the Reds better than Jeff Erickson. That's not at all. But part of the reason I feel these teams don't go to guys is they don't have them. You can't go to something. Justin. I don't know why you just don't jump into a V12 car when you're in the garage. But I don't have one. I have a Corolla, and that's kind of what I drive, right? So when you end up succeeding and you end up in the Corvette, now you're driving a Corvette. So I don't know if Justin's going to keep driving fast. I don't know. He never drove fast before. Well, the Corolla used to stall when you put it in third gear, and now they have a sports car. Alexis Diaz feels like that. No, he feels like I mean, it's in the blood. He's got pure filth. His fastball has a 31% whiff rate on it, coming in at 96 miles an hour to a 283 X slug, and the slider has a 45% whiff rate. I mean, this guy has got the goods. I think he's the definitive closer in Cincinnati. How many games they're going to win is another story, but we did see Shane Green save 31 games for a very bad Tigers team in like a half, right? So don't get too wet.
We just saw Daniel Bards save how many games for the Rockies of all teams.
Right. Now people are into Rockies closers, right? So again, I do worry Cincinnati, of course, worse for home runs than anything else. They're quite literally worst in home run to fly ball rate last year, worst in barrel to home run rate as well. Now, this has been part of the back and forth. I had this conversation with Derek Hardy was on my Mayo show the other day, and Guild's draft sheet was going back on it. So I'm not saying I definitively know the answer, but I am saying, Justin, I'm only using post-Humidor data. I'm not averaging data before this.
Yeah.
It's like an admitted physical manipulation of the ball, which we know how to change. Listen, and again, I'm not trying to hide anything. It's not proprietary. I'm using quite literally input stats. So to me, it's not the total home runs, but home run to fly ball rate. And guess what? The Reds kind of stunk. So half of those home fly balls that were going out were coming from very bad hitters, right? I mean, I like Brendan Drury, but it was Drury and Farm. It was really bad, right? The Reds stink. They stink. So you got to be careful because home runs are the death of closers, right? I don't think he's going to get replaced, but that's how saves get blown, I should say.
He gave up 5 total home runs last year. Like, I'm not super worried about him being a guy. Like, for me, it's all about, like, can he keep the walks in check? So that way, if a home run does come, it's not a 3-run shot. But I agree with you. Like, I think Alexis Diaz is being underrated in the market. For me, he's like the last guy of the safe closers.
He's like an 8.
Yeah, like I think he's super safe. And I understand like the Reds have liked working with a committee, but like you said, that's because they haven't had a guy. When they last had a guy, it was Raisel Iglesias, and he was the dude.
Hold on, Justin.
An elite closer.
Was that a committee, or was that like Lucas Sims pitched a game and blew his elbow out, and TJ Antone pitched a game. He looked good. He got blown up. He blew his arm out. They tried Amir Garrett. He went in. He was no good. He can't close games. He can only throw haymakers.
This is like a chef trying to build a meal with garbage, right? If you have bad ingredients, it's going to taste bad. But you put in some, black truffle, which Alexis Diaz is some black truffle, and you are going to eat that shit up. I have no problem.
Yeah, I think drafting he's one of like he's, again, we try and look at skill plus role, right, in some kind of weighted formula. He checks all the boxes. I mean, again, I understand Cincinnati ballpark. I understand the Reds context is not great, but I feel like he's getting the rock every single time it's his turn.
30+% strikeout rate each
Oh,
of his
yeah,
first
right.
two
He's going to
like,
get you those Ks
give
that
give
matter.
me him.
Yeah.
Give me him.
Yeah, me
I'll
too.
take him. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's continue moving down your draft board, because I mean you then 11, you get Ian Happ, who I love this year. I'm not the biggest fan of Jake Cronenworth, but I see what you're doing. You get the multi-positional eligibility, you get in the compiler. Alec Boehm is always interesting. If you could just raise that effing launch angle just a little bit. Love Reed Detmers. You got Harrison Bader in the 15th. Talk about these next 5 picks.
Yeah, again, it's a lot. It feels very boring, and that was kind of what I was looking for. So I guess I like this draft in that I'm not very boastful of it, which is kind of strange, right? Normally you have this big. This is my first big overall 15-team draft, out in public and everything, and you want to be like, yeah, this guy because of this, and it's not so much that. It's Ian Happ kind of does all the stuff that we really like. I think he's a double-double for sure. I also think he falls right into that category of hitters that get the boost for stolen bases. Say Suzuki is down for a while, which only moves Happ up. And again, every time you move a player up, you're going to add 26 plate appearances or whatever. He's an on-base machine. I think things are looking up for Ian Happ. There's a lot of strong peripherals as well. So I kind of have had him on my mind anytime I'm in a draft room. Also, always keeping in mind the scarcity at outfield. I know there's been some mixed opinions on this. I'm in the camp, it's extremely scarce. I'll admit, when we get into these draft and holds, when you get to the very end, there is a pocket later on of great spec plays. I mean, there has to be 12 or 15 like spec outfielders, fourth outfielders right now that I absolutely love. But you cannot go into week 1 starting these guys. So I've been leaning outfielder in almost every coin flip. That's where I want to go. So I knew that I wanted a few more. And again, I actually wasn't sure if I screwed up on the Bader pick. That one I was actually hoping for Seth Brown, who is the best hitter on a very bad team. But you get some steals, you're getting some pop. Average, who knows? Bader, I probably should be more worried about the foot. But he's on my Yankees, and he looked really good in a small bit, man. And again, getting into this pull power, he pulls power. And, Eno has done a ton of work now, in particular, with talking about these guys. How we've had a few guys across the league doing that. And I think we saw him apply it in the stadium. He hit him. God, he had 3 or 5 home runs in the playoffs. Not that I'm like overweighing playoff stuff here, but I mean, we want to see a player look healthy, right? So we want to see him on the field. We want to see them produce. That's always better than not producing. And home runs being the best case of that. So Bader, I kind of felt a bit pressed there. I don't like that was one of them, even looking back, that I think he checks the boxes. I think I was a little bit worried about steals, right? Because even though I think Julio is going to run, there is some valid concern that it's not 40, right? And it's like 15, right? Mm-hmm. I think the floor is 12 to 15. But I'm willing to entertain arguments where it stops at 21. I get that. And in the case where that happens, my steals would kind of be short. Because, again, Garcia, what I really like is I think you're getting 25-25. But, it's not 30, it's not 40. And since I was very aware of the sacrifice I made for Garcia as far as plate approach, I'm trying to get these steals now in more fuller packages. So you're reaching for a bit less. So I like the Bader pick. I guess I'd make it again. I still would wish Brown made it back. Then you kind of nail the Cronenworth bomb. It's just glue. They're just glue guys. Every day they feel a bit undersold. When you dig into the underlying stuff, they're a little bit better than you'd expect. They've talked in the offseason about Bomb working on the lift because the peripherals again are very strong. So like the power for Bomb is very good. He had struggled again with the lift, but he's hit a couple ding-dongs already. So we've talked about ignoring most of spring training, but some of the things that you want to is, we hear it in football more, is following the drumbeat, a steady drumbeat. So if you heard about this player that was a top prospect, had this issue that he was going to work on, they're making strides, they're bragging about the strides being made, and then the first look you get at him, he's yoking home runs. It's not to say to overreact, but it's okay to input new data into your conclusion. So I liked Bomb before, and now that I think we're starting to see little pieces of it, man, if you start to incorporate any kind of lift with the hard hit rate, the barrel rate is going to skyrocket because that's the only piece of the barrel rate that's missing. He's hitting the ball harder. His heart rate's going to be north of 44, 45 in Statcast. So he's getting a hold of it. It's just on the ground too much. Third base is also a bit of a blank show. So I felt a bit late. And after that, I don't know. People go McMahon. Maybe I could have went that way. He's kind of left a sour taste for me. Maybe looking back, I would have went McMahon. I think Baum has a better pop for power. And then Reed Detmers. I'm actually a really big Detmers guy. I'm going to have something coming up detailed. I'm going to put a teaser on Twitter, but I'm also going to make sure I highlight it in my rankings that I have out because I hope no one takes the wrong way. It's only the spirit of good debate. But my favorite podcast, Launch Angle, now with one of my good friends, Mark DiPietro. Man, they covered a bunch of guys I like, and they were just poo-pooing on everybody. And one of them was Reed Detmers. And again, I'm not saying that they all presented their full arguments. These guys are all objectively brilliant, and in a matter of have like 3 minutes altogether. So I want more. So I know I like Detmers, and again, I don't overreact to anything, but I always make sure to listen to people better at this game than I am, and they're not into them. And they were talking about pitching projections, which is funny. I'm laughing, Justin, because I have no idea what anybody's pitching projections are because I don't even look. I honestly think they were deterrent. I think they misguide you generally. I only know a couple of the home run to fly ball guys that I've been reverse engineering which ones not to regress. But I really like Detmers, man. Yeah, he dominated AAA. He struggled coming up, which I know doesn't sound like a good thing, but a lot of times it's part of the greater recipe. He made a change, dominated when he came back. We saw a pitch shape and mix different with results. I don't know, man. He feels like the guy to take the next big step. I feel like he's I feel like Detmer joins that glob with like George Kirby this year, right? Right in that, like, where is that? Like ADP 60 to 95, 60 to 100, depending on what your date range. Yeah, I really like Detmer to take this step forward. So I'm going to dive into it and highlight it, and I'll see if I can validate the BS I'm talking.
Yeah, I've been a little cool on Detmers, but the price hasn't actually gone up in the way that I thought it would. And so, like, I think he's actually primed to buy because if he's like your 4th, 5th SP in a 15-teamer, like that's really not like a guy you need to be depending on necessarily.
Right.
Especially when, like we're going to talk about the rest of your draft, though you guys are in the 25th round right now. You added, pitching wise, you added Tyler Anderson, who I think is a guy who's on my team in TGFBI. And I think he is the epitome of the Adolis Garcia's hate's gone too far camp, like that, where like he's just become an absolute bargain in the marketplace. You've got the entire Angels rotation. You added Jose
I do have all the.
He's another guy I've drafted.
You were simpatico on this one,
yeah, because he made a pitch mix change and completely changed who he was as a starting pitcher.
He's very good. Jose Suarez is very good. In fact, in that kind of little splash back there, nose to nose, I actually had him over Kyle Bradish, who I like. But I put him over Bradish that's how close they are. But that goes to show you, like, at that point in the draft, there are still some viable starters. But you got to be careful what you're looking for. And I think, gosh, is there a more natural pairing than Tyler Anderson and Dylan Cease? Can we mush these? I might get 400 innings for those two guys.
Yeah.
And they just might make it the most perfect pairing, right? Of this weird kind of more erratic strikeout stuff with, although, I don't want to put the cart before the horse for Anderson, but I was tweeting about this. He made some really stark changes.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's not a pitch mix change. It's like a pitch change. It's still a changeup, but he's throwing up differently. So when a guy starts adding an extra foot of drop and inches of run, it's a different pitch. And then we saw the whiff rate go also. So the fact this guy's throwing that changeup predominantly to righties and putting up a plus 30% whiff rate on a featured pitch, that's not a 17% strikeout guy, Justin. That's like a 22, 23, like a valuable strikeout pitcher. Again, we're not talking 14K per 9, but we're not talking about 6.5 per 9. It's not Kyle Hendricks. And that's what people are doing to Tyler Anderson right now, is they're trying to make him this contact pure ground baller, and that's not the case.
And I think, like, one of the things you and I think talked about a little bit off air is, for me, like, once I'm past pick, round 15, I like start really paying attention to the schedule of like the early season schedule. And the Angels have a really nice early season schedule this year. So they've got, I think, 2 series against the A's.
Yeah,
I think
A's,
they have a
Royals.
Baltimore series. I think they might have a Washington. Like they have a really nice opening schedule. So like getting these guys, and hey, you get to see what they are, but
Yeah.
you also get to see them against really, really easy competition early on. I'm all for it. Other guys you've added, like, so you guys are in round 25, so you still have 5 rounds to go. Reynaldo Lopez, Noah Syndergaard, Bailey Ober, Avisail Garcia, Isaac Paredes, Christian Betancourt, Austin Meadows, Bryson Stott. Are any of these guys you're jumping for joy, or are these just, hey, these are guys that are going to give me stats, and if I need to move on, I move on?
Yeah, you can see just a lot of balance. I'm trying to buy low on talent. Again, this is something. It's funny. You'd think I should be better at it coming from a trading background, but I wasn't. And what I'm talking about is buying too much into the recency. And there are terms for this stuff, right? It means I kept expecting continuations, meaning like, so a player was not great and they do well. And I kept looking for like breakout from there, right? Breakout is a trading term also, instead of life, trading, fantasy baseball in general. It's really usually a rectangular pattern. When things are higher than they should be, they generally come down. When things are lower than they should be, they generally go up, unless there's some kind of, unless you could objectively put your finger on why. So we're talking about guys that are really talented. I mean, I always liked Austin Meadows. And even further back, I always liked Avisail Garcia. And he's another one of those guys that, yeah, if you read the story, I know it's got some subjective narrative street stuff, but he just really struggled. He struggled with the move, and he struggled getting into shape, which, again, I'm not trying to make excuses. Yes, Pro Bowl players should always be in shape, but that didn't happen. So you don't punish him for the rest of his life, right? And then you have the first year of a new contract. There are very smart players that fade guys outright just for that alone. The fact of the matter is, Avisail Garcia is like off of the drafting map right now. This guy has 280, 25, and 10 on the ledger. Like, it's there. He's a good hitter. And I think some of the power stuff was even really good last year. A lot of times it can be hard to kind of hide that stuff, which is why people, like his max, Avisail Garcia max EV was 116.8 last year. He's hitting the snot out of the ball. That's a legit max EV that's probably top 10 or 15th percentile. But that's legit power. So he might have been one of the picks that I'm secretly jumping for joy, because I'm really excited about Garcia this year, and no one else is. I haven't really heard his name mentioned. Meadows, I felt like I was just kind of buying the talent. Stott, I think I was buying is in the second half. And, right, this is funny. This is like I'm out recency biasing the recency bias, but we have such a small sample that sometimes it's pedigree and skill, and you have to let him be a person and like grow. And that sounds right. That sounds kind of like not my style of analysis, missing all types of numbers. But he's always been a really good player. He struggled a bit when he came up. The Phillies showed the determination to get him the opportunities. They were very vocal. He's our guy. Him and Bryce Harper are like best friends also. I don't know how much that and 275 are getting in a bus here, but they are best friends. But also now we saw him kind of turn it up. And he's got power speed in there. And again, if you're looking for boring, that is it, right? Those projections are that's all the boring you could ask for, right? If you get 250, 60, 55, 12, and 11. But remember, Justin, again, something you talk about all the time, that's only 500 plate appearances. He's a full-time player, okay?
Yeah.
Bryson Stott, if he's not injured, is not going to be held at 500 plate appearances. So you have to add 20% to all those. And when you add the 20% to the adjusted plate appearance stuff, again, thank you, one of the things we've learned from you, he's a great pick back there. And it's super boring. It's so boring. It is just like, no one is like Bryson Stott's up, but double, not killer average, good team, good environments, So that's been it for me, trying to take this more balanced, boring approach, trying to be more cognizant. Again, like what you talked about, we mentioned just now, pairing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I have found myself in a position where I've had too many Tyler Andersons. And I know I just kind of talked them up, but I'm talking about in theory, right? The theoretical lower K, ground baller, contact kind of guy. Because you're saying, wow, this is the best pitcher at the price. You need strikeouts. So I'm front loading the same way I talk about maximum PAs, maximum IPs. I got 2 guys with maximum IPs. Woodruff and Cease should be among the favorites for innings pitched, in their respective leagues. You're going to get strikeouts with that, and then you could go with the filler and a guy that doesn't have to strike out the world, because I just don't know, even without a step up in strikeouts, Justin, why he's going as late as he is.
Yeah.
People just expect him to fall apart, I guess. I don't know. He didn't show any sign of that. He looked great.
All right, let's transition away from your TGFBI team, and I want to talk about John Laghezza. So let's get a little personal. When did you start following baseball? Were you a kind of guy who grew up watching the game, playing the game? How did you just get into the game of baseball?
Yes, I have baseball in my absolute bloodline, and I'm very proud of this. So not even understanding what it was. As a little boy, one of my first baseball memories is my father played Stratomatic with his degenerate friends, right? So right off the bat, I was growing up with, and I don't know if anyone is familiar with Stratomatic. Now it seems like that's Otnu, I think, right? That crowd, I believe, is the Otnu crowd.
I mean, there's still people who play Stratomatic.
Is that right? Physical 3D Stratomatic?
Yeah, I got invited to a Stratomatic league not that long ago.
Well, so they were playing in real life. I don't even know if that's a thing, people meeting up. And these grown men made their own dioramas, because you had your own stadium. Think of cardboard box to throw dice so they don't go flying everywhere. So the guys, of course, overdo it and turn these cardboard boxes into legitimate working stadiums with, and you will have pieces. So let's say you have a horror themed stadium, your runners will be little zombies or whatever. You know what I mean? The guys just take it as far as you want. Guys that had working lights in them eventually, dugout, just really out of this world. Felt for the in and lines. It's just really out there, really cool stuff. So I've always had what I didn't know, but fantasy baseball, right, in the bloodline. My family always watched. I didn't realize how unusual this was when I was very little. My great aunts, so we're talking, my grandmother's sister, 80s, we watched every single Met game, right? Every Met game. She never missed a Met game. So I was very familiar with Kiner's Corner, and when Tim McCarver passed away, right? I felt that, right, because I used to watch that stuff. And I remember asking her as a kid, well, why weren't you why are you a Yankee fan? My whole family is Yankee fan. We are hardcore Yankee fans. It's you're not gonna miss it. You show up into our house, we're Yankee fans. And I remember telling me the story, right? So they were Brooklyn Dodger fans. So the Laghezza family, and actually the other side, so there's the Tramontano family of Brooklyn, right? They were Brooklyn Dodger fans. And the Dodgers unceremoniously left, right? Your favorite word. And a lot of people, Dodger fans, didn't know what to do, because the hatred for the Yankees was palpable, dude. It was, and in fact, this is a spinoff. This is my favorite story from her. Rest her soul. She's fantastic. She would tell me that you could actually go to the store during those World Series games in the 50s, leave your house and go to the store, walk up the avenue or whatever, and not miss a pitch, because everybody was outside listening on the radio, and they were on the radios in the store. So it was like a community event. When playing the Dodgers, if you were walking around Bensonhurst, you heard every pitch. And because baseball is woven into the community, right? So I kind of had it in my family, women included, so I'm trying to get my daughter into it also, right? So it cross genders and all that stuff. So baseball really has always been it. So she said when the Mets left, half the family said, well, we're addicted to baseball. You know what I mean? We're not going to not like baseball. So they kind of held their nose, became Yankees fans. And then by the time a generation passes, once you have children, they don't know Dodgers, right? They only know Yankees. So you have kind of pure Yankee fans, pure broad Yankee fans. She would never yet root for, she couldn't imagine rooting for the Yankees. That's and I remember this with the Italian. She I thought she was going to spit, and the thought of rooting for the Yankees disgusted her, right? So she would never do that. And she waited until, 62. So she waited from 58 to 62, didn't watch baseball. Hardcore baseball fan. Wow. Didn't watch it because there was no team. And then the Mets came, and she watched every Met game from 62 into the 80s when I was a kid, watching it with her, right? So then my uncle was always into it, and my dad was always into it, and I played travel ball and all that stuff. And, so I've always been into it. I started fantasy baseball probably in the 2000s. early 2000s, but it was like 5x5 category, which I think is terrible because I made it to the playoffs and I feel like I got cheated, not knowing like the other guy took all these pictures and he like started relievers to get ratios and cheated. And, I don't know, whatever. He like racked up Ks on the last day or something. I got fooled. Anyway, and I've been into it since. And then, after I was a commercial electrician. I ended up getting hurt and I couldn't do that anymore. And I was also a derivatives trader and I was into sports handicapping. And like that kind of took me into what I'm doing now. So it's always been into it. It's always been a passion. And the first opportunity in my life that I had to like take a risk on a passion, it was the one that I wanted to be involved with. And that's why I hope it really shows. People will talk about my energy, but like it's not like an act, right? We're not faking this funk, right? You can't fake that. I really really love this stuff.
So talk to me about like that transition. You're an electrician, you get hurt, you got to find something else to do.
Yeah.
But why fantasy sports? Why sports betting? Like, what about it was so attractive to you to want to do this as a job? Because it's one thing to play the game, and it's another thing to produce content for it.
Well, this is cool. I actually have an answer for this one. Right. So it started with fantasy baseball, but when you're an electrician, even though I was a New York City union electrician, you do pretty well. Guys make a lot of money working in. Where I used to be into all, of course, obviously, I was into all the crazy stuff like power plant work, all 100 feet up in the air, throwing giant. That was all me, man. I really like the danger element, but you get hurt sometimes, right? And that's whatever. So I was into trading, like I mentioned. So I was derivatives trading in my off time because there are periods where you'll be out of work 6 months, 8 months, right? We're not talking about a couple of weeks. Being out of work 8 months, a long time. Even if you're responsible, and I've always saved, and I'm telling you, they make great money. I'm not knocking them. They do awesome. It's just an inherent part of the game sometimes. So I had another business. When you're stock trading, right? So derivatives trading is very instant. It really takes a lot to do that because that's high leverage, instant cash. Then I was into just kind of trading stocks, right? Which is what more people are familiar with, right? Kind of buying stocks and you're hoping to trade them when they cost more than when you bought them, right? That's like the essence of it. But what I realized is, as disciplined as I was, because I was trying to do this professionally, right? So this wasn't like, this is some money I have on the side, and if Apple goes up, it'll come back down. I kind of whatever, and I get it. I'm not trying to knock people that hold stocks. That's fine. But if you're looking to maximize every percentage point, that's not what you're doing. It's not a hold thing. You're actively getting in and out, moving pieces of your holding in and out, you know what I mean? Working your way, hopefully up and down with the market trend. And then I ended up getting railed overnight. I mean, God, I must have, whatever, more money than a lot of people make in a year overnight. The problem being, again, you don't have to understand too much about stock trading, except that you could tell the program at a certain point you want out, right? Because you want to calculate how much money you're risking. The problem is when you hold stocks overnight, you're on the hook while it closes. So if something happens in the overnight markets, Asia, Germany, or the place that opened before us, something happens, that price could go below where you were willing to risk it. And then when it opens, you took the new low price. So meaning, let's say you bought something, we use round numbers pretty quick because this is good. It'll help. I think this stuff helps in fantasy baseball also. FSWA award-winning moving averages article, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But because stuff matters, right? It matters. So I didn't invent it. I just like applying it. But so if you bought something for 100, you said to yourself, if it hits 110 amount with 10% win, and if it hits 90 with a 10% loss amount, fine. So it's at 105. You're feeling pretty good about yourself. You go to sleep. Bomb drops overnight overseas. All of a sudden, it's down to like $70. You're staring at, you can't get out if you want to. It goes from 70 to 60 to 5 to 50 to 40. And you're like, then the market opens. And because your stop order is below that, unless you cleared it, but then you're open to more losses, now the money that you were 5% up on, you just got cracked for like 65%. And if you're like me, and this is your small business, and like how you keep the lights on and your kids fed and your hot wife hopefully satisfied with you, you're selling oranges on the highway now. Like you're in a lot of trouble. And that's what happened. So I was the consummate responsible trader. Written daily plans, executed as perfectly as I could. And I got caught holding the bag, bro. I got smoked. At the same time, I was kind of sports betting, doing very well because I had started writing the algorithm when I first got hurt and realized that with sports betting, you can actually define the win and the loss in a way that you can't do for stock trading. Wait, and baseball happens 7 days a week, opposed to 5 days a week in the market. There's actually more opportunities. And baseball, because of its nature, being so fluid with injuries, call-ups, pitching changes, most people are not locked in to Pirates Tigers at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday. There are games that are softer than others. That's a fact. Now, I've had to kind of do the dip, duck, dodge, duck, and dive because even though it's funny at the time, I was betting professionally overseas for like thousands of dollars, and meanwhile getting limited in the United States for like betting $50 because they get hip that you're onto something. You know what I mean? When you're like, I started F5 betting and F5 total betting, and it's the truth. All the stuff you see about casinos limiting winners, that it really is true. They really will straight up. They block you, they stop you, then you get emails. Oh, we're sorry, what happened? Da, da, da. And like I'll notice too a lot of times I'll click a button because they look for people that have a routine, meaning the dead giveaway of a responsible player is that you bet the same amounts. The dead giveaway is that you bet the same time, right? So you have like a literal routine, and you get the spinning wheel, and then when it pops up, the price is different.
Mm-hmm.
The books use smart handicappers like myself to clean their own lines of sneaky bastards. You know what I mean? But whatever. But that's what happened is the stock market opens you up to losses that I was not willing to accept because I couldn't quantify them. Whereas, as upset as you could be if the Yankees lose to the Pirates or vice versa, whatever, you can literally put it in the ledger, especially now that books are organized, this is legit. You go to sleep, bro. It's all good. And I found something you talk about without maybe this different like taxonomy, right? You just use different verbiage. But there's emotional capital that's often unsung, right? Unspoken about. That is like directly tied to your financial capital. I don't know why people, and it's funny, I'm Mr. Cold, analytically driven. It's really to a fault almost. Like it sickens people when I get into gambling because I don't care. Like I lose, other people are upset, they're screaming. I'm whistling. I don't care. If you ever find yourself sweating the result of a bet like a loss, you've bet too much. It's a dead giveaway. That's one of the first things I learned on the trading floor was if you really care about whether or not you win or lose this trade, you've messed up already. You should. In fact, I used to be. The instruction was if you're worried about losing, to clear, to get out of it right now, because if you're worried about losing it, you shouldn't have been in it. Because you should only be involved in risk ventures that are pre-calculated that you've already determined a loss on. And I'm not saying I lose every bet. I expect to lose it. That's not what we're saying. But unless you're doing those calculations, again, the profits made on the edges and all these like weird, stupid adages. But that's why I ended up in sports betting. And to finish it, the fantasy baseball is the science of baseball is found currently in fantasy baseball. So like the Mensa, the cognoscenti of fantasy baseball is found in fantasy. Believe it or not, and the more I learn about this, and the more people I actually talk to behind the scenes, more so than some front offices, certainly more so than in the handicapping game. And what I'm learning now, having been in that industry, is, and that's not totally to knock it, but I don't believe in betting the board. They look at prices, and the way the price moves, and that's how guys bet it, and they don't care. I couldn't. Like, if you're bragging about not being able to name two players on a team, the amount of volume you have to bet don't talk to us. We're different. You're running trading operations. Like, I might as well be a trading desk, right? So anybody that says that, it's just different. I hate that. Like somehow it's like it demean. There's a lot of handicappers that are trying to demean the analysts who handicap. That as if like trying to understand the game. Like, that's not how you win. You bet on CLV. But dude, I buck CLV all the time. I don't care about CLV at all. And in fact, I'll do you one better. If I see market price moving against me, I use more trading techniques and I do what's called trailing the price. So meaning if the price is going in a way, like let's say I want to bet something at plus 100 and it's moving towards plus 110, Don't bet it. Let it go to plus 120. Let it go to plus 130. I could care less about the public. Here we go. Let's wrap this one up. Favorite George Carlin quote ever. Think about how stupid the average person is. Okay? Half of the people on Earth are stupider than that. Dude.
I love that. You're doing something new this year with ranks. So talk about that, because you are learning firsthand the difficulty, absurdity, and hair pulling outness that ranks provide.
Yes. So yeah, right at the bat, we just get it out. I am doing my ranks for the very first time. I'm calling it my top 625. It's live. It's $9.99 one time, which it feels pretty affordable. Especially it's a ton of work, man. Not just the rankings, which again is a lot of work. And I'm proud that I've emulated you over the years, because you've talked about what kind of labor it is, and I didn't understand this. I mentioned this briefly before, so I'll be quick. It's not like an injury happens, Gavin Lux, and you just say, "Oh, well, you move him to the bottom and like you will go to bed." The Gavin Lux injury moves someone up. That empties a tier to a point someone else may get pushed up. And I have found, quite literally, for every like one theoretical move that has to happen, right? The one pebble that drops in the water, I end up making like 15 or 20 adjustments. So it's in 35 tiers. I like to think that that's the best way to approach it. I don't think mishmashing positions is the best way to take it to a draft room, because I wanted you to be able to take this to the draft room and succeed. I truly think you can. I mean, I know some, you have to have a little context, right? Sometimes guys at the again, something you talk about all the time, just the guy at the very top of one tier, people are going to say, well, he's off by 40 spots. If I just moved him up to 2B6 instead of 2B7, he'd make that top tier and be up 80 spots, because there's pitchers in between and stuff. Okay. So you always need nuance and context, which brought me to what really is my piece de resistance. And one of the things, man, I don't know if I'm prouder of anything that I've done in this business, including that FSWA that I just won. And so we're on Sharpener. You go get the link. It's on, just go to my Twitter handle. That's where everything's streamlined. The best way to go. So the website's Sharpener. And again, $10 one time. But next to each player, so you can sort by position and player search. But each player has like a little player box. And I took it upon myself just to give my, like those arguments that we like to give on Twitter. But he didn't hold on, because like when you argue on Twitter, that's when you really get in the rabbit hole, But how come in October he didn't pull fastballs the way he did? They went on the ground, 5% swinging strike rate, whatever. But the thing is, like a river that Twitter is, right? Because Twitter is just a moving river. It gets washed away and you kind of lose this stuff. So I'm thinking, man, I could kind of keep my record and make my best case for everybody. So I don't know. I guess it's a write-up. I guess it's analysis. It's very granular, and it's certainly not like surface, right? So don't expect my writing to be, Julio Rodriguez hit 25 home runs. That's not what it is, right? Because what I found, maybe more than anything, and again, something, man, this is like the ultimate, ode to you, Justin, because I haven't had this time to express my kind of thoughts with you, and maybe even vocalize how many of them, you're like a progenitor for. Listen, it's what it is, and making these kind of granular arguments and presenting both sides, right? Not I'm making ranks and trying to telling you, like I'm asking you to pay me to tell you what order to take players. But at the same time, we don't want to be telling people anything, right? So a straight rank is kind of like a what, and I wanted to add the why. So I started doing these write-ups. We're over 100 players, over like 40,000 words at this point. It's still ridiculous. But it has these granular touches to it that I really think is what makes the difference. And I know, it's great. There's certain podcasts and stuff that kind of hand wave the top 100 players. And that's fine. Like, we need everybody covered. I wanted to appeal to more, not to say newbies and novices, but I think I bought into that too much, man. That I was like, okay, I understand everything about this player. Oh, okay, I understand everything about this player. And a guy like Adolis Garcia was a player that, under the microscope, under the scrutiny, passed a lot of things, I passed a lot of tests. And again, the thing I kind of got sidetracked that I want to mention that you was progenitor for was making sure to look at player seasons with a nuanced lens, in particular when they've been injured. And that's something, a mistake I made way too often. Looking at, and again, I'm like the spreadsheet master. But if it's only year-to-date stuff, and you have guys that, nowadays we're getting guys hit on the hand, and they lose a week, or they try and play through it for 2 weeks and then end up on the IL. Yo, any of those games that he went 0 for 23 in between the hit by pitch and the IL, those are scratched, man. It's garbage. It's no good. And there's quite a bit of that. Guys that missed tons of time with hit by pitches or foul tips, or even better, I found Fox Sports, which I don't generally use, has a very good injury tab because it's everything. Meaning, you need a little bit of help because they don't tell you exactly what it is, a bit nebulous. But like, for example, Jonathan India, who I was just covering for my rankings yesterday, who I'm extremely high on.
Me too.
He had something like 12 injury entries. Now, he didn't have 12 IL stints, but so that Fox Sports page is counting. I had to go to the next step and went to like Roto World, to like match up the dates and stuff because they do give it a date. And some of them are just that, like I'm saying, where it opened my eyes to, if you weren't doing that, which again, who is doing that? And that's why I'm here to do the work that they don't have to. You would never know that he got hit on the hand and missed 3 weeks and owns a car. Like, it happens all the time. And I couldn't believe he's just one player like that. There's a ton of Buxton was like that a bunch of times, right? Buxton has it done. Now I know people laughing. Yeah, Buxton with injury notes, surprise. But it's the truth. It's the truth. He didn't always go in the IL. They were kind of managing him because of little dings, right? They're getting dinged up, whatever that means. So I've been adding that injury stuff, and using the nuanced lens on the guys at the top has just opened my eyes, especially with pitching. I think, and I get it, a lot of the pitching projections are similar. So we say, I guess Zach Gallen equals whatever. How many of these pitchers are the same right now, right? Gaussman equals Gallen equals Castillo equals Manoah. They're all the same. Equals Fried. And it's like, whoa. They were all very good. But that's not good enough for me, man. And, when you hear me talking about pitch shape, that's kind of, because that's where I feel the next wave in fantasy analysis is, again, being selfish, I feel that's the pathway to the science that helps me understand the betting, right? So, like, all these things kind of work in accordance with each other. They don't work in combination. And a part of why I love fantasy so much, again, this is like the thinking game, right? The thinking person's game, the thinking man and woman's game is the fantasy game. And then there's the strategy part, which is like, bam, I haven't even gotten, I'm not very good at that part, frankly. Dude, it's true. I made every mistake you can make. I didn't have batting average. I didn't have the catchers. I didn't have the saves. You name it. I didn't pay attention to FAB. I didn't maximize plate appearances. I didn't make lineup switches on Thursday. You name the mistake, I made it. Hard game.
It is. It's an incredibly hard game. But I love all the stuff you're doing. I love like you are in a really, really great spot because we saw this a few years ago with DFS becoming a huge part of fantasy baseball, right? Like, and there was a lot of pushback on it initially from kind of the old guard, but now it is a huge part of our industry, and betting is next, right? We're seeing all these states kind of, come up with betting rules, allowing, online gambling. I wish California would get on board so I could do a little bit more of it legally. But you're like primed to be like one of the faces of that part of our industry, and I'm super excited for you. If you're not following John, you need to be following him on Twitter.
I legit turned red and blushing. Holy crap!
Oh,
I'm matching the color of your wall right now.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I learned so much, and I think this is one of those things. Like, people often, go, well, no, I just play fantasy sports. I don't play DFS. Like, I don't do the daily stuff. Like, or I don't bet. But you can become a better fantasy player by doing these things, by learning these things. And it's not just about like, obviously I want to make a profit when I play DFS or when I bet, but it also just makes you a better and more well-rounded fantasy player in general by doing these things and by researching these things. So like, definitely follow John on Twitter at John Laghezza. It is a must-do. Get his rankings. $10 is a steal for 625 players ranked, and like we talked about on Sleeper the Bus earlier today, 626 because you're gonna have to rank Mike Moustakas.
Right, Mike Moustakas.
So you're gonna have to add one or at least drop one.
He's gonna hit 40 home runs, isn't he?
He's absolutely going to. Yeah, he's gonna hit like 273.
Yes, he is. Yes,
he's gonna hit 37 home runs, and it's gonna be insane. the last question I always ask people on these TGFBI episodes is, let's say someone's listening to this or watching this on the YouTube and going, I want to be like John. I want to do what John does. What would be the one piece of advice you would give them?
Oh, all right. It's okay. So like I'm not because I do so much weird stuff. Like what to like be like a bet professionally or like do stuff in the space like both present just to like. All right, if you want to do like this stuff, it takes some practice. So I would say the first thing to do is practice. My best advice to anybody before you get into any risk venture is to do it on paper first, because most people lose at first, like shocker. But what most people don't do at first is not step on that rake, meaning put yourself through this. And again, I'm stealing this idea, but it's something I've done and it has made me, I don't know, I do this for a living now. You know what I mean? Like my wife doesn't work. I don't want to say I don't work, but like, man, I don't like to call it work. I'm loving this shit, you know? Yeah, you gotta put yourself through a combine, I call it. Meaning, you want to learn to bet? Okay. Don't let anybody stop you. And you also should not be copying anybody, because most of these people are not winning, okay? Because they're not properly defining risk. So that would be my two things is learn to play on paper as you begin to understand risk allotment. I think that's the very best advice I could give anybody. And the idea is this. If you think you're going to, first of all, if you think you're going to walk in and like crack the MLB market wide open, you're wrong, okay? That's just not how it works. Okay. And I've had very successful points, and like everyone, I've had losing points, losing months, losing halves. These things happen. Absolutely. Okay. So without understanding daily risk and risk allotment, you're going to end up at zero. So the most impressive thing about my career is how long it's been so far, right? That I've been betting in public every single day, and I'm still here. Like I still have a wallet. You know, it's not empty. That's my testament. But that's the truth. It's because before I looked before I leave. And so basically is practice on paper. Again, remember, we talked about this before. You could physically define all the risk. You don't need to play for real money. You don't. You could start with a theoretical 100. Also, my favorite is, my favorite, Justin, is you're successful because you have more money than me. So you think if you only had 100,000 in your account, you'd make money? That's what people think. Well, yeah. I'm not going to make money because I only have $500 and I need this money and then I lose it. Wait. So if I gave you 100,000, you're going to make? No. That's a fallacy, pure fallacy.
Most people don't start with that in their account. They build up to that.
Dude, I was a $2 better when I started.
Yeah, exactly.
$2 better. $2 min better. Yep. And it's not to say you work your way up, which you will and you can, but it's more about put yourself through 60 days of betting. Are you profitable after 60 days? If not, guess what? I just saved you money. You know what I'm saying? And if you were, and it felt good, process played, you're really no worse for wear. I don't want to hear you left $1 million on the table. You know what I mean? Because then you're in the 0.0001%. You know what I mean? And fine, you could mail me a hate letter or something. But for the rest of us, the normal people out there, and most of us that have regular other jobs, again, if you're worried about the money, you're betting too much. If you're risking too much, you're going to lose. So when people say it takes money to make money, it absolutely does. So the third piece of this puzzle is, as you're playing on paper and learning to understand risk, put together a bankroll, something that you can play with. The aforementioned risk allotment, meaning what people do wrong is, I got $100, they lose it, I deposit $100. And it's like, wait, what is this? What is this? None of this is. Again, if you're doing stuff, then have fun. Don't take any of this to heart. This is not for you. If it's fun for you and you play with money you don't care about, this is not for you. If you want to make money through a system, and again, you don't necessarily mean buy a big house, but just not deposit all the time, right? That's what we want to do, is not deposit. That is the key. Save your money, learn about risk, real quick. Best way to do it, just simple numbers for people that already have the brush fire started. 2% of your daily risk would go on basement.
There you go.
This goes to defining units and stuff. I have 48 units at risk. If a unit should be 1%, you can't risk 48% of your roll. So right off the bat, anybody risking more than again, I'm calling out like thousands of people right now, like quite literally. But this is what I do, and I don't care because I come from the trading floor. And if you want to like get down with me in the dirt and we want to like make money and stuff, I'm down for that because that's what I do. You know what I'm saying? Not this like fake fugazi, like I parlay 69,001 odds, stuff like that. I had to keep the lights on, and thankfully, I'm not doing that right now. I'm betting on for most people, it's probably a high level, but for where I had again, real numbers, because I needed to make enough money to keep the lights on, I needed $100,000 cash just so I could bet $2,000 a night, 2%, knowing there's going to be ebbs and flows to try and make enough money at the end of the day to cover all this nonsense. You know what I mean? It ain't easy out there. That's for sure. So, again, a lot of math, a lot of love, a lot of patience goes into it, a lot of work, and it helps to listen to Justin,
John, thank you so much.
That was awesome, right?
I really, really appreciate it. Follow him on the Twitter machine
man.
at John Laghezza.
Friends for life, kid. For life.
Absolutely.